Hello and welcome to episode 12 of The Dirty Corner. In this episode I'm going to be discussing some very sensitive topics, so here's a warning at the top of the episode. If you will be affected by the discussion of sexual assault or physical assault, then this is the warning that is the content of this episode. And without further ado, this episode is called... Okay, so I've got some notes here to try and keep myself on track. I'm going to be trying to tell the story as closely as I can remember it, and this is from my memory, so there could be flawed memory, but I'm being as sincere as possible with recalling what happened at the time. From what I recall, I was a third year in university. The complaint was being processed, and there were 3 students who supported the complaint, 2 young female students and 1 older male student. And then I had assistance from 2 other students who weren't part of the complaint. But this became known that they were kind of allies to the complainants. And one of whom was a go-between and trying to really pave the ground between the people who were deeply affected by the different instances of bullying and harassment, and the other was someone who was a friend of some of the complainants and a friend of some of the people on the other side, including some of the bullies, which was a little strange, but I'm not someone to say you can't be friends with someone, so someone who was my friend would then fraternize with people who they knew and they would testify was a bully. One of these occurrences of befriending the bully happened by basically after uni. They would go out for drinks with the bully, and or on this occasion they went out for drinks with the bully and another student from another year, a female student. And this is bully number 1 and the female student. And the female student from another year is someone who I don't really know, but this is the way that I heard the story going. So they go out for drinks. They're drinking and dancing at a club. They have quite a lot to drink where they're all very drunk. And this friend of mine goes to the toilet. The female student joins them, and when they go into a cubicle, this female student then forces her way into the cubicle with her and assaults her in the cubicle sexually. And she's obviously very upset by this, and comes out, tells bully number 1 what happened, and he, from what I remember her telling me, he said, "Well, it's all a bit of fun, isn't it?" She's quite upset by this, leaves, and whilst waiting for a taxi calls me and tells me what happens. Is really upset by the situation and conflicted because she feels like she can tell me but she can't tell her partner. I'm obviously encouraging her to connect with her partner on this because that is her deepest emotional bond, and from what I know about her partner, they were very supportive and sweet. I could have been wrong there, but I'm pretty confident that their partner was supportive and sweet and a kind person. So I was telling them the virtues of saying they'll be there for you, and what you've told me, they'll be your best support network, whereas I'm on the end of the phone. I can't be there with you, it's too far away for me to travel. But I think I was offering to go and see, again, this is my memory, but I think I was offering to go and see them. And it was just very tricky to try and advise what to do, because I think I would have said, now if it were me, I'd go to the police because this is assault. And it's something which bully number 1 didn't seem surprised by. Didn't seem like he wasn't aware that that was going to happen. That again I could be wrong about, but from what I remember them telling me, they'd said the assault happened. They came out, told bully number one, and bully number one said, well, it's all a bit of fun, isn't it? Maybe it wasn't planned, but I wouldn't put it out of the realms of possibility. It's pretty scary stuff, but that's what my instincts told me when I was told this story immediately after it happened. They get into the taxi, they go home, they're upset. We talk about it afterwards, but only briefly. And they said they're not going to call the police and they're just going to deal with it themselves, which is fine. And I hope they are well and processing that in a healthy way, because that's a horrible thing to happen. So that's a scary and horrible situation. Now, whilst this was happening in uni, around the same time, not the same day or night exactly, but around the same time, my studio friend and I were being put in that disciplinary meeting that I posted. And if you haven't seen that, then check the link here. And basically, we were in this meeting talking about different things that happened, and my studio friend was on campus and I wasn't. And what would happen would be that bully number 3, who I haven't mentioned that much, but was a bit more spiteful, I would say, in the way that they would bully. They, I suspect, would be the one who pushed the nail through my studio friend's finished painting. I can't imagine bully number 1 or 2 necessarily doing that. I think bully number 3 would have done that. The reason is, bully number 3 would come up behind my studio friend and shove them in the corridor quite hard and shove past them and then say excuse me and walk past them. And this happened more than once. So that's physical assault which occurred on campus. Again, I would have complained immediately and said they can't do this, this is unpleasant, and gone to the tutors. But I think all faith and reliance upon the tutors' maturity and professionalism had eroded by that point and dissipated. So that was a really dark and unpleasant time where I was massively disconnected from the physical actions that were occurring on and around campus, and trying to give support and advice from where I am, which is too far away. It's about an hour away from where I would have to go to get to university. But yeah, that was what would happen. To give background for bully number 3, it started off just a bit petty. And my first memory was that in the first year, we'd had quite a few sessions. There were lots of people in the studio. It was a busy one-room studio with people all over the place. And we'd had conversations with tutors, and they'd said things like, does anyone believe there's such a thing as bad art? And I'd be the only one to put my hand up and talk about why I think there's such a thing as bad art. Does anybody understand composition? I'd be the only one to put my hand up, and this was a different tutor. Nobody else said that they'd understand composition. And has anybody got experience with curating? And I'd put my hand up, and I'd done a little bit of curating. It was more assisting people who were curating, but it was, enough where I could talk about it. But they didn't ask me about it. They just said, all right, and then they carried on. So bully number 3 comes up to me one day, out of the blue, not straight after this had happened, and said, well, you say you've done curating, but where exactly have you been and done that? And the way that she'd said it struck me as weird, but I thought maybe she just asked it in an awkward way, so I just tried to interpret that as charitably as possible, and said, well, it was more up north, and it was helping people like my brother, where we'd curate certain exhibitions in places. But before I started uni, I was working with the Royal Cambrian Academy and helped curate a public. And as I was saying this, she just turned and walked off with this, disgusting look on her face, a look of disgust on her face. And I just looked around and thought, what a weird thing to happen. I looked to my left at these young female students who weren't necessarily people I connected with very well, even though I tried. And I said, did you see that? And they just kind of like looked down and looked away as if they didn't hear me. And that was one of my first senses that this is a weird, unpleasant atmosphere that's occurring at times. But I just thought, I don't really want confrontation. I don't care for pettiness or gossip or bullying or anything like that. So I just thought, I'm just going to move on from it, because nothing big had happened back then. It was just, that was a weird, petty exchange. And I thought, okay, whatever, that's weird, and just moved on. That's what bully number 3 was like. She was kind of spiteful and nasty. And another quick story is that my German friend, when she was having a hard time, and I think she was off ill, had received a message on WhatsApp from bully number 3 saying, I'm just here enjoying the sun. And there was this weird picture of her with sunglasses on with her head really far back like that. And I remember my German friend showing me, saying, I don't really understand what this message means. It was out of the blue, we weren't talking. And I said, I think that's her way of saying that she knows what your situation is, and she's trying to taunt you with, a comparison with how she's living. And my German friend just frowned as if to say, like, yeah, but that doesn't affect me. And I said, yeah, but that's what some people are like. They're petty and unpleasant, and that's apparently what bully number 3 was like. And then after all the assault happens in the toilet, and the physical assault on campus happened in the corridors, there was also an occasion where my studio friend would call me and say, bully number 3 is glaring at me during lectures and it's really scaring me. And I said, film her, because one of two things will happen. Either she'll say, stop filming me, or she'll look away. And if she says, why are you filming me? I would say, you're glaring at me and I don't know what to do about it. So I'm recording you glaring at me because it's intimidating. And sadly, my studio friend was too nervous to do that, because they did send me the video of them filming bully number 3 doing this, but the video is kind of up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, and like, kind of catching her doing it and then away. And I think she was trying to make it look like she didn't have a camera recording, whereas I would have just recorded like that, just trying to draw attention to it and saying, like, I'm not going to be intimidated by someone like you doing this, so I'm going to record it because it's evidence of what you're doing. And so the video kind of captures, that she's sat there like looking at her like that. It was kind of creepy. I could see why it bothered her. But it wasn't substantial enough to submit as evidence. But fair dues, she tried, Anyway, fast forward, all this stuff happens, and when it comes to graduation, I'm not attending still, I'm working remotely. And the funny thing is, it's actually, if I can just digress for a second, when I would say to tutors, because I'm working remotely, would I be able to get access to this lecture or this workshop or this session? And they would and ah and then not give it to me. They'd say, we'll try, we're not sure if the technology will work, and they'd make excuses and just not let me have access to the sessions, basically. It's why in the complaints, one of the 3 complaints that I put in was a disproportionate access to learning, which was that they wouldn't let certain people have access to the teaching sessions that other students would have, and not just students who work remotely. But anyway, I'd say this to tutors, and then eventually I got an email from the pretentious tutor saying this: Dear Simon, we are aware that some students will not be able to attend the degree show meeting in person, so will be called through MS Teams. I am concerned about your use of the term remote student. In none of the material for the program is there a distance learning option specified. Could you please refrain from using this term in further, as it is not appropriate? Kind regards, the pretentious tutor. First, I think he means refrain, not reframe, and further instead of future. But again, what is the issue with using the term remote student? Does that give me legal rights that they were trying to deprive me of? because I was using that term because they knew that I couldn't attend because I had underlying health issues and I was vulnerable at risk of contracting COVID and having severe health issues. And I was trying to avoid that. And plus I'd heard that tutors were infected with COVID and still having one-on-one sessions with students and infecting students with COVID. That's what I'd hear anyway. So that's what I was trying to avoid. And then I received that email to show you the tone of what the pretentious tutor was like. Pretty scummy, and I didn't like him at all. But anyway, so we're heading towards graduation, and a lot of us didn't have our marks. They'd take a very long time to give us our marks, and we were wrapping up the course, and when we had our marks, it was basically the people who were involved with the complaint would get the lowest possible pass, and the people who were the bullies would pass with a distinction. You know, they'd pass like, your work is amazing, you are an amazing student. And the funny thing is, it sounds so spiteful for me to say that their work wasn't good, because art is subjective. How could I prove their work wasn't good? If I could show you their work, I would. And I do have images of their work, but I just can't do that. It would just be a way to identify people, and I don't want to do that. So, yeah, unfortunately I can't share it, but it was very uninspired and uneducated work, and it didn't evoke a response. It wasn't, you know, shocking or upsetting or angering or conflicting. It was just, okay, this is where fine art is. It's kind of depressing to think that fine art isn't delivering anything stronger to say or to do than this. So it was kind of a kind of neutral response of, okay, this isn't the kind of art that I think is doing anything or is helping anything, but okay, if someone wants to make that, I'm not objecting to them making it. I'm just concerned that that is a degree show standard of work. I didn't get to see the dissertation, but after hearing the people discuss thoughts and articulate their views, I find the idea that their dissertation would be strong to be dubious, but obviously the tutors gave them enough assistance to push them through to a higher mark. Now, I say obviously, let me clarify that actually. Again, this idea of a disproportionate access to learning meant that when students would ask for help from tutors, we would have meetings. Like I had meetings with the pretentious tutor saying, you know, this is what my dissertation looks like. He then gave me notes about, you know, try and do this, and do this. And I did those three things, and then he gave me a poor mark, and I did everything that he'd said to do. Other students will have been given help, and I suspect will have been pushed through with the assistance of the tutors to a far greater extent than I or any student who was like-minded to me would have been given, because of this bias that the tutors had. This is in a area of speculation, but I'm pretty confident that these students wouldn't be able to produce a dissertation that was coherent or articulate or intelligible without greater assistance from the tutors than what we were offered, and not just greater in the same amount of meetings, but I think they would have been given more resources, and I suspect more time from the tutors and a more compassionate tone than me or any other student like me would have had. That's my feelings on it anyway. I suspect that would be the case. So yeah, we graduate with low marks, and then at the graduation ceremony I hear from a couple of students, one of whom tried to make amends and tried to bridge the gap and say, look, I don't want any of this to be a problem, so I apologise for everything that's happened. I take back anything that I've said, full-throated apology to everyone, and disavow their friendship with me or connection with me in order to ingratiate themselves with the tutors and the bullies. And then at the graduation ceremony was still in the out group, basically being ignored and having backs turned on them. And the same with one of the young female students who I was in touch with, said that when they were at the ceremony no one would talk to them except for a couple of people. Then again there was another young female student, part of the complaint, who had their work vandalised. In the last episode I discussed that, and I'll link that in the description below because I can't put another link up here. I can only do it one. I think I can only do one in a video. I'll see if I can do another, and if I can then I'll put it up here now. They weren't put in an out group, and I wonder if that is a way of giving them plausible deniability for their kind of more covert bullying. When I put in a complaint about the instances of bullying in the studio, the associate dean's first meeting with me was quite positive. His very first meeting, he explained that he understands that bullying can be quite covert and not necessarily overt. I was relieved because I thought, yeah, it can be something which people would say, is that bullying? And I'll give an example of what I mean. I used to attend meetings on Teams, and that's what all the students would do at the time during COVID. And we'd all be in a meeting area, and bully number 3 had a family member who had either died or was in the hospital. And at the time I reached out and said, oh, I heard about this and I feel really bad about it. I've had family members who I've lost recently, so I just want to give you my support, and if you need to talk about it, just let me know. And everyone went silent. Instead of saying, yeah, you know, me too, or whatever, or her saying, all right, thanks for that, or whatever, everyone went silent and then started talking and laughing with each other about something else after a pause. And that's something which bullies do, which is when you talk, people go silent. Now that may seem like the tonal, the kind of tone of discussing death may have made everyone go silent. Okay, so let me give you another example. In one of these meetings, bully number 2 had been absent for a few sessions. So I thought, oh, I've got an illustration here that will help catch him up on what he's missed. And I said, oh, bully number 2, this is, I obviously said their name. I said, this is what they were discussing last time. It's a cross-section of different things. And it was basically, I was showing them. Everyone was silent again. Bully number 2 said nothing. And then bully number 1 chipped in by saying, because it was art, craft, design and technology was the cross-section. It was basically, where do you fall on this scale? What's your preference? Is it more towards art, more towards craft, more towards design, or more towards technology? And bully number 1, after a while, chipped in and said, craft is shit. And then bully number 2 started laughing. He said, I miss you, bully number 1. And they all laugh and start talking. But that was after a moment of silence again. That is more covert bullying. So that's what people will do to try and push you out of a group and make you feel unwelcome and, not part of a friendship group or part of a supportive network of students, part of the cohort. So that's what I was having high hopes for when the Associate Dean said he understands that bullying can be quite covert. I produced evidence of overt bullying and he just dismissed it one after the other after the other. I suspect it was because it implicated one of the tutors, and the tutor being the dean's wife. And when I called her by her legal name, he objected and said to call her by the name that she was using in the school, which was just changing her surname, which I thought was a bit devious as well, to try and give the appearance of slightly less nepotistic connection than there truly was. And I suspect now that almost every tutor in the school, the dean, the associate dean, it was all nepotistic connection. and not qualification and not by merit, because of how poor the course curriculum was. Anyway, I feel like I'm belly aching on these things now. This was a bit of a big episode to talk about. So obviously the incident that I discussed first in the toilets, very sensitive, and I certainly don't want to make anyone relive any trauma or feel upset or betrayed by that information being shared. But I do think it's really important that people understand the gravity of the how can you say it, the abuse that was occurring, and that to me is about as far as you can get, is having someone corner you inside of a cubicle and do stuff to you, and then getting shoved in a corridor as well as a horrible abuse that was occurring, which I wish these things were reported immediately, but that's not for me to do. Me talking about it now is because every time someone asked me about where I went to school for art, I would tell them, and if they said, oh yeah, I think I know someone who went there, and I will immediately say, well, I was on a fine art course, and some people who do illustration or applied arts or something else may not have had this experience, because I've heard that it wasn't nearly as bad as what we've had. In fact, if anything, some students said it was quite a good experience. What I experienced was, this. And I'd go through a list of things, and then if they ask a question, I'd say, I've got details, I've got dates, I've got videos, I've got audio recordings, I've got all kinds of things to prove. In fact, I've got testimony written and verbal from students to back up what I've said. And it's just like a trauma dump every time. So I'm hoping that after doing this series, The Dirty Corner, I'll just be able to say, yeah, it wasn't the best of experiences. In fact, it was quite unpleasant. If you want to know any details, I have a series on my channel called The Dirty Corner. One thing I haven't done with this series, which I'm going to do, is make sure that they're in a playlist, so that if anyone wants to see them, they can just go to the playlist and watch it from start to finish. So I'll probably do that after the last episode, because I think the way that you do it would benefit from that. Anyway, this is all technical stuff. That's what I'm planning to do. So this was a big episode for content wise. I'm sorry if it was either upsetting, or if some people thought that I'd have some either writing or visuals to back up what I'm saying, but I don't. There's no visual or written confirmation of this, so this is just a storytelling episode. Take that as you will, but I'm certainly not in the business of fabricating information. If any of it's inaccurate, it's because of me trying to sincerely remember what I was told at the time and what happened in the moment, and that may have I may have misaligned some details, but I know that the main important points will be accurate, and that's for everything. So the video backs up what I said, and that wasn't any or much different than what I remember. If you don't know what I'm talking about with the video, I've shared a video of a disciplinary meeting. I have another video that I'm going to share soon. It may be the next episode, but I'm not sure exactly, because it's going to be a lot of work, and that's one which I mentioned previously, where I said I have a video somewhere of students disagreeing with my point of view on the school, and I think that's an important thing to share, because this is all quite one-sided at the moment. It's all just me saying this. Here's a student backing me up and saying this as well. So I'm going to show the other side, and I wasn't sure if I could find the video, and it turns out I did, so I was happy about that, because I want to show how this was seen by other students. And to give a bit of context, the video I'm going to be showing is one which I recorded where an external examiner had invited the students to join a meeting and give feedback on how they feel the course was going. So there we are. That was, well, I'm looking forward to playing that for you, because that will show you how the students were discussing it, how I discussed it, and how they reacted to how I discussed it and how I reacted to how their reaction was. It was all quite interesting, and again, my memory may be different from the reality, but what I'm going to do is what I should do is to record a video of my memory of it, and then I'll watch it and see how accurate my memory is, because I haven't watched it since. I've just seen what the video was, heard the voice, heard the meeting, and said, yeah, I know what this video is. So anyway, that should be coming soon. All of these stories lead to The Dirty Corner. The last episode of this series will tell the story of why this series is called that name. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment if you have any stories that are similar and or have any reaction to anything that I've said. But yeah, I hope you're well, and I will see you in the next episode.